Hi guys, and welcome back to another video. Today we are looking at the brand new iX3. It's like a normal X3, but it's not. This one is fully electric, so it has no engine and gearbox. That's been taken out and been replaced by batteries and electric motors. Now, we have been driving this car around the city of London, but what's it like in the real world or slightly out of town? Let's jump in, take it back to HQ, and we'll share our thoughts. So you joined me back in the car. We're just leaving central London and the traffic is typical stop-start as you'd expect. The car is actually very relaxing to drive in traffic because there's no noise and vibration from the exhaust and the engine. You don't feel it coming through the pedals. It gives you that extra bit of silence and relaxation you kind of need when you're stuck in stop-start traffic. The car itself is actually very nippy. It accelerates very fast. It's very torquey low down, as all electric cars can produce maximum torque from low down. And the surprising thing about the car is that it does feel more like a big i3 than it does an X3 with electric engines. If you've driven an i3, you have a good idea of what this is like. But because it is an X3 which has been converted to fully electric, it still retains that normal car features, the way it looks, the way the interior is. And for some people who don't want to transition into that full electric, so it looks weird, the interior is very different and you know it's electric, I think it might be a good stepping stone for those kinds of people. So it handles itself amazingly well in an urban environment, and that's probably reflected also in the fact that BMW only make this in two-wheel drive. So although this is an X3, it is not four-wheel drive, it is actually rear-wheel drive only. And that's probably because BMW knows what the main usage for this car is going to be, and that's going to be for city dwellers, especially for places like London that have congestion charge. And if you've got a fully electric car, you're basically exempt from that, so you can save yourself a lot of money in the long run. So I'm just going to head back to Luton now. I'm going to go up the M1 and I'll join you again when I'm on the motorway, just to give you my impressions of what it's like at cruising speeds. We're on the motorway now, halfway home, and the car is actually very, very comfortable. The suspension is compliant, so the motorway is a relatively smooth surface. It's gliding along nicely. There is a bit more wind noise than normal, but that's only because there's no noise from the engine and the exhaust to kind of mask that out, and there's a little bit of noise from the tyres. So if you haven't driven an electric car before, you won't know what I'm talking about, but if you have, you'll understand what I'm talking about. You hear those noises a bit more purely because there's no engine to mask them. But overall, it's a very nice place to be. It's very comfortable. It has enough power on the motorway as well. If you want to get into gaps of traffic, you put your foot down. The car seems like it has plenty of torque almost everywhere in the range of speed to get you to where you need to be. I don't know if I mentioned this, but this car does have a panoramic roof, and I really like it, especially as the interior is very dark. That really lightens it up and it makes the drive just that little bit more bearable. We've escaped the city and we are now surrounded by greenery, trees and bushes, and we can take a closer look at the iX3 in terms of its design. Now, it does look like a normal X3 apart from a few key elements. The main one being at the front, the kidney grille. So instead of the traditional slats, it's got a panel which covers most of the front, and it has a bit of an air gap here to cool the electronics that are inside the engine bay, which we'll show you in a little bit. The front bumper is very different to the normal X3 and designed for more aerodynamic efficiency to improve the range. Coming over to the side, the most prominent difference is the wheels. So the wheels are a split 5-spoke design, but they've got these plastic covers in between the spokes, and again that is to improve the aerodynamics and therefore increase the range of the car. Apart from that, you've only got this little side grille over here which has the BMW I in blue. So this, design wise, straight away you can see it looks more like a normal car than an electric car, whereas with the i3 or the i8, which is a hybrid, you can tell They are very different in the design, and that's kind of, anyone looking at the car from a distance knows immediately that is electric or hybrid. So coming to the rear of the car, again, it is very much like a traditional X3. The only two differences are the rear spoiler and the bumper and the lower diffuser. And again, BMW have said they are optimized for aerodynamic efficiency to help with the range of the car, and being electric, that is very important because you want the battery power to last as long as possible. One of the drawbacks of going electric is that the motors are in the back of this iX3. As I mentioned, this is not four-wheel drive, it's rear-wheel drive only, so you have lost a bit of boot space. Only 30 litres, so it's not a huge amount. So in the normal one, this would be slightly deeper, but this just levels off at the entry of the boot. And in here, you've got the extra space for the charging cable, and the motors will be underneath here. So on the traditional X3, the depth would be slightly more. So this car doesn't have an engine, so that means there should be more space in the front. So let's take a look to see if that's the case. What's this iX3 hiding under the bonnet? Let's take a look. You can see there is a big cover here, so it doesn't look like there's any storage. So there must be lots of electronics underneath here. If we remove that, you can see there's not actually as much as you would think there is. And it's a bit of a disappointment that if you've lost a bit of space at the back of the car because of the motors, could have gained some here quite easily. There's actually a lot of space that could have been used and may have been handy for putting the public charging cable in here rather than at the back. The interior of the iX3 is a very nice place to be, even at the back of the car. So that is in my seating position, and I've got plenty of leg room. I'm 5'9", but I'm sure if you're a bit taller than me, you still won't have any issues with the amount of space in the car. I probably mentioned the panel roof before, but it's even more impressive in the back of the car. Lets a lot of light in, you can see the sky clearly. And I think in the back, you're not really used to seeing that view. In the front, yeah, lots of cars have glass sunroofs, but it's a nice feature to have in the back for the passengers. So one of the other cool features this has is that you can actually tilt this rear seat back. So if you like having daytime naps like me, you can put it back and have a little sleep. One place I won't be having a nap is from this driving position here, because this car is not a Tesla, but it is very much again like a traditional X3. It's got the modern BMW iDrive, which can be controlled from the dial here or touchscreen. We've had this in the car since the F90 M5. It's very easy to use. This one also has a live dash, so you can also get the sat nav and the music information in here, which actually looks really, really slick. And I don't know if I mentioned the panel roof, but lets loads of light in. Even though the interior is fully black, it does not look dark and dingy in here. So we know what this car drives like in the city and on the motorway. Let's get it on some country lanes and see how it is. Let's see what it's like on some country lanes. So this is very much your typical English B road, and if you watch any of our other videos, you'll be quite familiar with them. It's one of our main test routes, and I have to say the car is riding incredibly well. It's just as comfortable in the city and on the motorway as it is on these roads. It's soaking up the bumps pretty well, and although this car is not designed for it, it corners extremely well. I'm actually quite surprised, and I think that's mainly down to the fact that the center of gravity is a lot lower on this car, because the engine and gearbox have been removed and the batteries are all underneath the car. It's actually very flat through the corners, has enough power if you wanted to carry out some overtakes, and this is quite a narrow road and I don't feel too uncomfortable driving it. There's still plenty of space. Yeah, you can see here it's just very flat through the corners and handles the bumps and undulations in the road really well. This particular stretch is very bumpy. I'm not getting thrown around that much. So overall, I'm pretty impressed with this car, considering it's an adaptation. And I think that's what might help with people making the jump to something like this, because it doesn't totally look electric car and doesn't shout I'm an electric car. If the range suits your needs and you want to get into an electric car that's slightly larger, then this may be the thing for you. It does very much feel like a larger i3 to me, and the only reason I'm making that comparison is because we do have one as a family car. It's essentially my wife's runabout, which we use a lot on the weekends to go into the city. But if you need a bit more space, then this has the same kind of spirit as that, but it does have the space and is slightly more luxurious. The interior is obviously a massive step up from that car. So I'll be interested to know from you guys what you think about electric cars in general, and whether Evolve should actually get a electric project car. So although I have the i3S, that is mainly my wife's car, so I'm not going to do too much to it. But do you guys think we should buy an i4 and modify that? Let us know in the comments below. I'll join you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching, guys. If you liked the video, please give us a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, please remember to subscribe to the channel and turn your notifications on. If you want to join the conversation, please drop us a comment below and we will do our best to respond to you. And if you're running out of things to watch, why don't you watch one of these two?